Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for OutCare's OutTalk series, a webinar series devoted to discussing diversity and intersectionality within the LGBTQ community. This series brings together providers, patients, community members, and organizations across the country. All of our OutTalks are recorded and can be watched on our website at your own leisure. The OutTalk series would not be possible without our strategic partners, including La Roche-Posay and Embold Health. Before we jump in today, I am happy to reveal that OutCare is having its first gala. On Friday, June 24th of this year, we will celebrate all the strides that we have made. We will come together with dinner, nationally recognized performers, speakers, and local drag performances. We're very excited and hope that you all can join us. I'm very excited today about our OutTalk, which is titled Aging with Pride. Today, we will hear from very many inspiring people doing great work in aging and older adult populations. I'm very thankful for our moderator today, John. John, take it away.
Thank you, Dustin. It's fantastic to be here. And I think it's amazing that OutCare is sponsoring this and talking about part of the LGBTQ population that is often overlooked. So I think this is a really valuable conversation. So as Dustin said, my name is John Sovak, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist located in Pasadena, California. I'm also the clinical consultant for an organization called the Life Group LA, and we provide HIV services for those who are living with HIV and those who love them. So it's been a passion of mine for quite a few years. And in fact, I have over 30 years experience in the HIV and AIDS community. And because we're talking about aging, and I think, you know what, if I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to just come straight forward about it. My name is John, and I am 60 years old and proud of every one of those 60 years. Okay. So with that said, I'd like to introduce you to the rest of our panel. They're going to be introducing themselves, what organizations they're with, their work that they do, and they don't know this, they're getting a bonus question from me, which is, what was your favorite cartoon character, either growing up or currently? Okay, take it away. Let's start with Michelle.
Thank you, John. I'll start with favorite cartoon character, past and present, Aquaman. pretty basic. Part of my life is that I'm actually a certified U.S. Master swim coach, and I do coach triathlon, open water swimming, and competitive swimming. So it's just kind of natural for me. Yes, what I do for locally here in Los Angeles, I'm the president of the Gay Elder Circle, and we do mentoring and leadership, and we kind of coach gay men and bisexual men on leading mindful, purposeful lives. Outside of that, as my background says, I'm also a member of the SAGE and the SAGE Roundtable and the National Resource Center on LGBTQ aging. And most importantly, during the pandemic, which has actually been a benefit for the Gay Elder Circle, is that I've done a number of workshops for colleges, universities, County of Los Angeles, Inland Empire, here in Southern California, and various aging councils on the challenges of LGBTQ aging. And the primary workshop that I do is historical trauma in the past as it relates to LGBTQ olders now, on how that trauma plays into being an older adult as they age, and what service providers can anticipate or maybe participate from this particular age group. And we're looking at some of the olders of the older. So we're talking about like the 70 plus and older age groups who really experienced some of that trauma from the 50s and the 60s.
Wow, thank you. That sounds like beautiful work. Michelle, why don't I come to you next? I think you're in Columbus, you shared earlier. So if you want to unmute and let us know who you are.
Hello, thank you, John. My name is Michelle Battle Fisher. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am in Columbus, Ohio. I'm affiliated with Equitas Health Institute, and we are the education research arm of Equitas Health, which is an FQHC lookalike medical organization proudly serving the LGBTQIA+ community, as well as others in need of a medical home. I'm also adjunct faculty at Temple University, as well as Wright State University. What else? I said I'm associate director of research, hopefully. And my favorite cartoon character will be Minnie Mouse. I love Minnie Mouse. I love Disney World. I love the fantasy. I don't cosplay Minnie Mouse, but I would have to say Minnie.
I
100%.
love it. We've got an Aquaman and a Minnie Mouse here with us. So, Yale, it's your turn. I can't wait to hear who yours is.
The pressure. I'm like, I've didn't my age. I have to come up with a
one has to
character.
admit their age.
No, that's right. I turned 50 this year. I'm proud of it. It's good. So my name is Yael. I'm a social worker with the Alzheimer's Association at California Southland. I've been working with Alzheimer's and dementia for about 17 years, and I absolutely love it. When you, my I love, I have a memory of loving Goldie Gold and Action Jackson, or Action Jax, was it? She, like, she could do anything. We're more of a Star Wars family in my house, so I have maybe more Star Wars. They're not cartoon characters, but
Well, they can be depending on what
that's
you're
true.
watching
That's
them
true.
through. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. And what do you do with the Alzheimer's organization? What is your focus?
So I help lead support groups. I help train volunteers. We do education programs for anyone in the community who reaches out to us, but primarily offer just support and education and resources to people along their journey. And people call us at any point in their journey. People who've just been recently diagnosed, people who are towards the end of life, and anywhere in between.
Cool. Thank you so much. You know, I think the place that I want to start with a little bit too is this idea of, you know, being an elder in the gay community. It's a really fascinating thing. I hear this quite often that it used to be, I remember there was this moment when you turned 30 as a gay man, you became kind of irrelevant in the community. I've been told it's now 25. And when I look at that as an idea of who we are as a community, like, what are your thoughts about how we build up the idea of LGBTQ aging and relevance and the wisdom that gets carried as we age in this community? I believe personally we're an incredibly valuable resource, but I would like to know what either your experiences have been or what your thoughts about of how we build into a more powerful version of what aging in the LGBT community looks like.
I'll jump in on this question. You know, with the Gay Elder Circle, we highly encourage intergenerational dialogues. And when we have community events, we definitely market them to an intergenerational group. And our group is fans of Ashen Applewhite and her book, This Chair Rocks, which is all about reframing aging. So we definitely, follow that. We were fortunate to receive an advanced copy of her book and the workbook that goes along with it. We put it into practice in our group. And I like bringing that conversation about reframing aging into the workshops that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, that's a wonderful point. I think and I want to first say that I'm an ally, so I wanted to say that first and foremost. We tend to take aging, LGBTQIA plus aging and aging in general, as something that needs to be feared and something that needs to be hidden and obscured. And what we can do, or it's particularly in research, and I'm coming from the research point of view, is we need to move away from the deficit focus of what aging is into something of amplifying the strength and resiliency of the population. And unfortunately, we have less of the strength and more of the discussion of the ills of aging in the LGBTQ community. But I'm completely for reframing LGBTQIA plus aging. I like to call it successful aging, where it's more than intentionality, it's the actual ability to act upon that intentionality of aging successfully. So love that point.
And I know for myself personally, when I was younger, I had always been taught this belief that I should respect my elders. And what I found for myself that mythology did is it made me respect them, but it made me distance them at the same time. I was supposed to nod and please and take care of rather than being to sit down and dialogue with. And I had an amazing experience in a training that I took many years ago of this older um, black female um, facilitator who I was very deferential to and very like, yes, and can I get you some water? Would you like me to get you a chair? All of those types of things. And she basically turned to me, it's like, okay, you need to stop this bullshit because there's no way that you and I can learn from each other if you keep putting all this barrier in place. And I'd just be curious, like as aging is happening in our community, what do you think are some of the barriers that the community is either putting up or that we as we age are starting to put up ourselves?
Mhm. I think that, in response to your question, I think that kind of works both ways. We grow up and we have our internalized barriers. And if you're conscious, you are aware of your barriers. And then as other people you speak and you work with, you can see their barriers as well. So it's just being recognizable and cognizant of that. And ageism works both ways. Some people say, yeah, you're too old to work, you need to retire. And on the other hand, younger people like, oh, you're too inexperienced, you don't have the value. But in fact, both groups coming together, sharing the value and sharing the knowledge. In fact, I think a great example of that is last week, I had my first complete virtual immersive environment for an hour session. I actually I'm attending college, and it was part of our assignment a couple of weeks ago to be in a total virtual immersive environment with a simulated avatar. And it was great. And you don't expect people my age and older to be in those immersive environments. So there's still room to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say that I think it's really important to amongst aging communities or amongst aging people to make sure that you have a community. And I find across the board, people often isolate, partially due to just society and their maybe usefulness, and partly just due to their ability to move within society, in the norms of expectation. So I think it's important. Healthy aging requires community. And it's something that I always emphasize, finding your corner where you can be productive and where you can be stimulated and where you can be social and you can give back. I think it helps everything. It helps your mental health, it helps your physical health. You're still here and you're functioning and you have a lot to contribute.
Yeah, it was not until 2020 that Healthy People 2020 listed sexual gender minorities, LGBTQIA plus individuals as a disparate group. And just thinking about my grandmother who has dementia, there are institutions that we normally think of with aging, assisted living, nursing homes, where the LGBTQI identity cannot be fully realized and it's just, unfortunately, it's not allowable in many instances. And so that self-worth and the ability to outwardly identify with who they are is a huge concern. So we also have isolation in your homes, as you mentioned before. So I think it's a very timely issue. Caregiving is another issue as well. As we age, we tend to have our kin, who are those who are taking care of us, but as we very well know, the LGBTQIA community, we tend to have chosen family and not biological kin that are taking care of them. So it's all about resilience in society, giving that space in order to be resilient.
And what does this whole concept of healthy aging even look like? And how does it look either similar or different for people who are LGBTQ people and people who aren't?
I think that's an extension of the prior question, and to bounce that off of that question, plus what Michelle and Yael just both said, is that what aging looks like is to be fully engaged mentally and physically. I've been doing a lot of research. For me, it's new to me on care farms, where you're taking people who have dementia and putting them in a farming environment where they're kind of free to do whatever they want to. They're engaged mentally, you know, picking things up from the farm or planting flowers or whatever, and they're physically engaged as well. Here in the United States, for many people, aging is very passive. You're sitting in a chair, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're watching TV programming. So I feel that our aging community in the United States, whether you're LGBTQ or not, to remember it needs to be mind and body needs to be engaged.
I just to echo that. I obviously I fully agree. It's so important to be in a community. There, Europeans have this model already where they have seniors and families and kids kind of all living in a similar building or in a similar community. Here in Los Angeles, there's a community called Park La Brea, which I often recommend for people who aren't ready for assisted living but can't live at home. But there's just a feeling of community there. You have students who are in college, you have seniors who've lived there for a while, you have young families, and there's a lot of little like fountain areas that you can walk around. They have a coffee shop, they have a gym, they have a movie theater. There's a senior center that can like look after, that you can check in with, has programming, but it's such an enriching environment, right? So even if you're bored and isolated in your apartment, you can just come downstairs and you have an instant community there with you, which is such a beautiful model.
Well, I think the thing I'm hearing from everyone then that is community is a really important part of aging successfully. How do you see that playing out specifically in the LGBTQ community? Because as Michelle said, a lot of times when people do have to go into assisted care, oftentimes they have to go back into the closet. So how do we bridge that gap between perhaps needing care, but still trying to find community for LGBTQ identity?
And see, so that is a great response to when I did my introduction about all these workshops that I've done, at colleges and universities, is training and educating the next generation of leaders and decision makers, and letting them know that these are the barriers as we age up. We're looking at the first generation of LGBTQ older adults who may be HIV positive, the first generation of out transgendered people, and we're probably looking at the first generation that's going to be not only out, but maybe later in life experience dementia. And for people who have been kicked out of their home at a very early age, and as we know how dementia plays on the mind, what kind of memories are going to be triggered as their dementia advances? For someone maybe who transitioned as early in life, as they become older, what kind of memories will come out later in life? As opposed to maybe someone who just last week, I met a gentleman who just identified as gender diverse at 67 years old. So how is that going to kind of play if he develops dementia? So it's understanding how all these things kind of play together and recognizing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bill had asked me about this conversation, about this point, when we were talking about this presentation, and obviously we don't know, we can't predict a dementia mind. We can't predict where their memory and their reality will be at any one moment. They could face a lot of memories of trauma, or they might not. And the thing that I said to him was, wherever they are, I would first of all hope that my goal would be every assisted living to have some inclusion and training for the LGBTQ plus community. That seems to be a no-brainer. And I think now that they've kind of got COVID kind of managed, they can go back to bringing in important programs and training their staff and really increasing awareness and inclusivity. And if someone were to have a traumatic moment, it's so important to meet them where they're at and to validate where they're at and help them get through that trauma, just as we would any other trauma. But most important would be to just validate where they're at, and know that they and allow them to have a safe space where they can have all their behaviors in that moment, if that's occurring with them.
Well, and when I hear you say that, one of those, what for me kind of tends to be a little bit of an industry buzzword, the word safe comes up. And I think safe is a really challenging word to throw out when we're looking at LGBTQ affirming care, because safe has a lot of different meanings for different people. Is it safe for the people who are the providers, or it's safe for the people who are actually going there as clients? And I'm always a little bit reticent about that word safe, because I want to know how it's being designed. I want to know what is being done to actually make that, and whose comfort and whose definition of safety that is.
I think that also brings up the point of intersectionality and multiple identities, elders of color, ableism. We are not just one identity, we are a conglomeration of identities. This intersectionality is something in these trainings that needs to be dealt with as well. Sometimes you will hear of trainings that were just one size fits all, and that's the problem. That's very much the problem, but our health providers are using tools, and it's very regimented as far as what is supposed to be done with each patient, with each client. So when we're coming against that kind of environment, the personalization goes out the wayside, and it certainly goes out stage left when the providers or the individuals are not culturally humble, the individuals that are in front of them.
I'm glad Michelle said that, because, as being LGBTQ community, regionally, we are different. We're different from San Francisco than we are LA. We're different from LA than we are in Detroit or New York or Boston. So we have our own regional quirks. And then you take that and layer, race on top of that and culture on top of that. So I totally agree with Michelle, and cultural competency also needs to be diverse. And we need to have programs like SAVED has on, certifying organizations on cultural competency, but we also need diverse people doing that for diverse communities.
Well,
And the time is now to do that. I mean, if there's no better time than this environment that we're in of inclusivity, I feel like, as Michelle said, with the Black Lives Matter movement and with sexuality becoming more of a forefront issue, that's more discussed, society is going to have to adapt. And I think SAGE, as wonderful it is going to have to come up with new trainings for 2022. We all of it needs to be updated, and now is the time to do that.
Well, and one of the things that's really exciting about OutCare is they're actually putting together a medical provider training, a new one. They've been doing that type of work for years, but OutCare is now putting together a new program that's really trying to address people at the level of medical school. So it becomes an active part of their training. And I think that's really exciting. We have a couple of interesting comments in chat that I wanted to share. One of them talked about this idea of creating safety in an assisted living situation where you may have one person who's well-trained and safe, But then the shift change comes, and the next person is someone who is not trained and safe. And then the shift change happens again. And, the activities director comes in the morning, and they're an outside contractor, so they're not necessarily trained and safe. That this idea that it needs to be at all levels in an organization. And the one thing that I'm really big about in the trainings that I do is it's also not a one and done situation. This is an ongoing conversation. And so many facilities say, oh, we did a training 10 years ago, so we are an affirming community. Anybody have thoughts on that?
Well, Equitas Health Institute, we are in the business of training corporate entities, nonprofits, community organizations, and each of those kind of spheres requires different kinds of training based on the environment in which things have to be navigated. If you're in a corporate organization, are pronouns safe to even be uttered? If you're in a non-for-profit, how are you serving your clientele who happen to be, who are LGBTQIA identified? So yes, I think training cannot be one size fits all, and we are hopefully a part of that solution.
If you're using a training 10 years ago, sorry, Bill, if you're using a training from 10 years ago, it's time to review.
Yeah, I just want to say that, training at minimum should be every 2 years. And if you're onboarding new staff, that new staff member should be trained on, have a portfolio of trainings they should go through, which would include LGBTQ competency at the minimum. And I think there are multiple organizations available locally and nationally that can, step up and fill those shoes. But even here, Elle and myself are both here in Los Angeles County, and from one side of the county to the other, it looks very, very different. So we need to address, like for myself, the LA LGBTQ Center is 30 miles away. If I was mobility challenged, that would be a 2-hour ride on public transportation. So we need to address, smaller LGBTQ centers or service providers who are on the outskirts of, the LA County, so that we can address those needs in multiple ways. So looking at various service providers who can step up to that plate, we need to reach out as the leaders in the field to those organizations and let them know they're not filling out. In fact, the LA County Department of Mental Health is actually working on that right now.
Well, I think one of the challenges that also comes up, and Robert was actually pointing this out in the chat section, is that is focus in areas that can have funding and can provide access to the money, but there's so many communities where one of the most basic issues, as you were saying, is how do I get transportation to these services that I need? Looking at housing and poverty levels and how these are going to impact aging care as well. I think that's a really important point.
And John, you just said the magic word. Well, indirectly, you said the magic words. LA County is working on Care Navigator program for older adults in the county. They're in the formation stages right now. It's probably not going to materialize for about a year, but doing Care Navigators for the older adult population is definitely in the works. I've got my voice in there, which I'm very thrilled about. And what should that, care navigation site look like? And all the dimensions, from mobility, different types of, neurodiversity throughout the older adult and, just the population in general across the county.
And just to address something that Barb brought up in chat that I think is really important too, is so the needs perhaps of a gay man may be different than those of a lesbian, are going to be different than those from a transgender, a non-binary person, a bisexual person, an intersex person. Those needs are going to be different in each aspect of this acronym that we throw around as one big set of letters. And that is not actually the lived experience of much of our community.
So well said. Thank you. we can have a model, and we can have a model, but everything has to be interactive and relatable to each individual because everyone has had their own unique experience.
I think service providers as well as LGBTQ centers need to have a strong network. For what you're saying, John, is like, for instance, AMBI here in Los Angeles County is a bisexual network. It started at Loyola Marymount University. And one of the persons in my network is actually the chair for the LA County Department of Mental Health subcommittee on LGBTQ issues. So having this diverse network, which includes bisexuals, for here in LA County, we have the Trans Latina Coalition, having them all step up and be networked with each other, network with all the LGBTQ centers, so that they can fill in and do education where we have these gaps. Some of the smaller LGBTQ centers don't have this network, and we need to go to them and not wait for them to come to us. And that's one thing that the Gay Elder Circle does, is we go out to them, which is how I got all those speaking workshops. In fact, I have 2 more this month.
Mm-hmm. So on that, it's really interesting because we just got a comment from Jesse, who is the president of the new Queer Center in Phoenix. And they are talking about that as they're working with the aging queer community, they're also looking at training and teaching the younger queer family how to, integrate together. But the one thing that they said that I think was really powerful is they're not just sitting in Phoenix, but they're going around to the cities around Phoenix. The same idea that's happening here in multiple communities in LA is trying to look at and expand out into the areas that aren't necessarily the center and the reached parts. Because there are 3 of us who are here in LA, we have Columbus, but there are a lot of aging queer members of our community who are in much smaller rural settings. How do we create access for them? I brought the conversation to a standstill.
Now, rural settings provide their own challenges. And I think, in rural settings, something that happens out there that doesn't happen in the urban setting is that I'm also here locally, I'm on the board for PFLAG. And so we have those rural communities that may have a PFLAG chapter in their area, so they can network with PFLAG. But also the Master Plan on Aging for the state of California, which went into effect in January 1 of last year, the LGBTQ community and other vulnerable communities were cornerstones of how that plan was put together and outreaching to all these vulnerable communities, especially in rural areas. So I'm very, as a contributor to that, I'm very happy that made it into the plan.
I mean, one of the major benefits of this virtual world that we've been forced to experience is that we have access to so many more resources, potentially, assuming you are tech savvy, are able to get connected to the internet. But so many new communities have been created because they've been able to join talks at every time zone and every place without leaving their house. And it's been an incredible experience to connect people across the country.
I just want to remind Gail that conversation, it's stopped short when you have older adults who are digitally challenged and don't have access to computers. And I'm sure you meant to say that, but that's a great concern. When I'm on these conference calls with the County of Los Angeles, and you hear that from service provider over and over again. My older adult population doesn't have computers or laptops or tablets. So that whole digital divide, there is a gap there with the older adults.
100%.
Michelle, how's it going over there? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm from Appalachia, so I'm going to represent smaller rural areas. You've already mentioned broadband is a big issue. Where I'm from, you're lucky if you have broadband, whether you have even 3G on your cell phone. But what I was going to say is, when we're thinking about community, I'm not sure if digital community is fully replacing that visceral feeling of having a person in front of you. So as we said, like the isolation in assisted living or in nursing homes, or being isolated in your home, that only goes so far. So that's why we need to have organizations such as the ones that you all are mentioning, who are making vested efforts to actually go out and engage. And engagement is the key here. Engaged where individuals are in the community and with the community.
You know, it's interesting, Michelle, as you said that, you kind of sparked, I'm just going to go there. It's a little bit emotional for me, but I think it sparks something that may be of value to this conversation. Is you're right. We do have a lot of the ability to connect electronically. And yet I remember very early on in the AIDS pandemic, oftentimes people were dying alone in hospitals because there was no one there, and there's so much fear and lack of understanding about the virus itself. And I worked with an organization called LA Shanti. And at that time, sometimes we would just go into hospital rooms and hold someone's hand while they were dying, because we were the only contact they had with the outside world. And for me, that was such a life-changing moment that I've carried with me forever. And I'm such a strong believer that connecting and community and in person is so powerful and so important to our mental, spiritual well-being. I just remember just being the only person who would be willing to show up and hold someone's hand, actually physically touch their skin, was such a huge moment in the people dealing with that virus at that time.
That's beautiful. And by no means did I mean to imply that virtual world will replace human interaction at all.
Oh, I don't think we took it that way. It's just
Okay.
resourcing, but yeah.
I just think it has opened up new opportunity for connection that people hadn't had in the past. Obviously, everything that we said was it should be considered of technology issues, but nothing replaces a human hand holding you. That's incredible.
I think Barbara in the chat was making a fine point about organizations that aren't where you are, mentioning Old Lesbians Organizing for Change, OLOC, which is a organization, if you haven't heard of it, if you have not heard of OLOC, you need to be checking them out online now. The pride that radiates from these organizations, which have a specificity, particularly for individuals on the LGBTQI spectrum, that doesn't necessarily get as much attention. Lesbian, asexual, there are others as well. It's just not male. It's not only male identified. It's just not gay identified. We have the entire spectrum that is in need of support. So, Barbara, I hope that you find the community that you're looking for.
I hope this is appropriate that I can add this. But as a mom of two kids, I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. I think we're going to be forced to move the dial in our training, in our discussion, in our understanding, as Michelle just said, that it's not just he and her, right? Whether it's because of the pandemic or not, the youth movement has had an opportunity to really explore where their identification. And I know we're talking about seniors, but as they grow and develop and and speak out. It has to move the dial. It will move the dial, and how we care for our seniors, how we care for just humans in our society. My daughter is very much involved in the LGBTQ plus club at her school, and has she's educating my husband and I every day. She's educating anyone who will listen every day. And she's not the only one. So I just think that we want to understand healthy aging, and we want to provide safety for our seniors. But, and I said before, now is the time for change. It's going to move the dial. We don't have a choice, because these kids are coming up, and they're going to change it.
And you know what? I just had a brilliant idea. Let's have QSAs at like senior care centers. Why does it have to only be in schools? Why not bring it out into like other communities of like,
Sure.
Come on, let's do it. But we have about 10 minutes left, and I did want to open up. We've been catching a lot of the questions that have been showing up in chat. But if any of you who are listening along have any other questions you would like us to address, we've got this amazing panel of wisdom sitting here with us today. Just type them into the chat box and we will bring them up. It feels like everybody on the call has the chat box open. So if something shows up, we will bring it in. So while we're giving you some room to maybe formulate some questions, I would be curious from all of you, what is one resource that you know of in your area that you think would be one of the best things for someone to take away from today? You only get one, Bill. A place to start. Anybody?
I have to say the Gay Elder Circle for, I put it in the chat, we're a great resource, to our community, to the county. And we've proven that over the life of the pandemic by doing these multiple workshops for the community, universities, even out in the valley, they've networked with us and tell us about older adults. We want to understand them. So bringing the generations together, and that's been one of the benefits of the pandemic for us.
And actually, Bill, can I ask you a question too? Is Gay Elder Circle national or mostly based in a region?
It's strictly West Hollywood, LA County based. It is not national. It's not even international. We've gotten requests on how to start up chapters internationally. And we say, no, you can't start a chapter, but we'll tell you how to set up your own Gay Elder Circle in your area. And to answer Barb's question, yes, it is male focused because it's one of the few remaining gay and bi safe spaces. We encourage lesbians and transgender women to form their own similar circles. However, when we do community events, they're open to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Because the one thing that I would want to see, because it's over your right shoulder, is also that SAGE as a national organization is an amazing resource as well. It's not only, it's a great clearinghouse to find other resources that might be available in a person's community. So I'm going to advocate for SAGE, since I only let you say one, Bill. So Yael, Michelle, do you have one that you might recommend?
Well, I'm going to be selfish here and recommend Equitas Health. I think that culturally humble care is not something that's easy to find, and that is central to our mission, central to what we do. And I think Bill mentioned we have those with HIV who are long-term survivors. And so this is a whole new generation of LGBTQIA elders with a resilience and they've seen the battles, they've seen everything that has happened during the AIDS crisis. But now we're living with HIV and we're thriving with HIV. So organizations such as ours, we have support groups and things of that nature. But I would strongly suggest that we're talking about healthcare, try to find an organization like Equitas Health who has that commitment towards sexual and gender minority health.
My world is like so focused on Alzheimer's and dementia, so that I would recommend the Alzheimer's Association at the minimum, talking to someone on the helpline, but they have a national community resource finder that can, when you put in your zip code, can help locate different senior programs or resources across the country. So if you needed an attorney, or you needed to look at housing or placement or support groups or education, whatever it is, that they're well connected throughout the country. So.
And then I'd like to put out an interesting resource as well too, a little bit different, going outside the box here, but it is about trying to create community and create connection, is also simply looking at Meetup. So Meetup is a site you can go on to and find out what's happening in your community. Find shared interests, find things that might be fascinating to you. Meet up with a group that's doing something new. And in this is a possibility of creating amazing connection, which may be LGBTQ, may not, but will help keep your vitality and your interest in your community alive. I have some really good friends. They were part of a meetup. There was a classic movie meetup, and they would all go see movies together and have dinner afterwards. And it was just so enthralling and exciting for them to know that these were happening. And as things are starting to open up in a lot of communities right now, Meetup could be a really powerful way to find community and support that would keep that vitality alive.
For sure, 100%. And any support groups, like if there's a support group in your area, it's also a great way to find community.
Mm-hmm. So
I am in agreement on Meetup.
Yeah, it's fun. And the thing that's great about Meetup is you can look at it and find things that you never knew you were interested in and just go to one meeting and be like, ooh, I'm kind of fascinated by this.
Totally.
So
Totally.
We are getting close to time. I do have a final question that I think would be really beautiful for us all to be able to share. And well, I mean, what is your personal hope and or vision of LGBTQ aging as we move forward and continue to grow and expand?
I've got a vision that just doesn't stop. So my vision is that, as crazy as this sounds, my vision is that we don't need LGBTQ centers across the country anymore because they have become a part of the community. So the community senior center or healthcare center already includes LGBTQ care or minority care in a robust way. That would be the ultimate integration, and that we don't need all these individual freestanding service providers that our counties, our cities have stepped up and have really integrated them. But that's a long way off from happening.
I'm going to piggyback on Bill. Certainly we're not there yet. And organizations such as Equitas Health, we make a mission of serving a population that is unserved. I'm just going to say unserved, not underserved, but unserved in the traditional medical environment. So the vision as an ally for LGBTQIA plus aging is that resilience will be allowable, that it's not going to be stressful in order to live authentic lives. Because we know stress has a negative impact on physical and emotional and mental health. So my hope would be that living stress-free and just living to be oneself.
Yeah.
I mean, they both said it so well. So I a very similar vision, and I hope to be a member of the team that brings it to action.
Mm-hmm. So my vision is a little bit different, and it's also based on a personal philosophy. And this is something that I found years and years ago in a really strange source. Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire. Go back with me into those original books, okay? There was a moment when they went to Paris, and there were the vampires who lived in the catacombs beneath Paris. And there were two types of vampires that tended to be there. Ones that had totally lost their connection to reality. They were often locked up because they were seen as insane and dangerous vampires. And then there were other vampires who would go out into the world and they would be part of the society that existed. And when asked what the difference between them two was, it was said the ones that stayed relevant, that stayed interested, that were willing to learn as society changed around them are the ones who kept themselves together. And to me, I think that's a really beautiful thing as I age and as the people around me age, and I encourage them is stay involved, stay relevant, stay curious, stay interested in your world, and it can create such a beautiful experience of aging. And that's my philosophy, and that's how I'm trying to live every day as I can.
I think if there were satellite programs from, I don't know if you're familiar, John, with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, if there were more satellite programs throughout communities for older adults and not just anchored at colleges and universities, but get them further out into the communities, that would be awesome. And if we could really replicate that, you know, at a national level.
Yeah, I'm there with you. So we have come close to our time, and I want to hand it back to Dustin, who's going to kind of send us out today. So Dustin, it's all yours.
Hi, thank you, John. Wow, what an amazing discussion. I know I myself learned so much, and I cannot thank our panelists enough for all of their perspectives and insight. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. We greatly appreciated your participation. As mentioned earlier, all of our OutTalks are recorded and they're uploaded to our website, and you can watch us at your own leisure. Also, consider seeing and supporting us at our first gala on Friday, June 24th. We hope to see all of you there. All of the information is on our website. And lastly, I just want to let everyone know OutCare is the national nonprofit 501c3 LGBTQ+ health equity organization. We are here to support all LGBTQ+ people and all of you. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time for education, training, mentorship, research, or just to feel heard. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.